Imagine waking on a calm autumn morning in one of the richest cities in the world. Church bells echo through narrow streets, merchants prepare their shops, ships from Brazil, Africa, India and China crowd the harbour, carrying gold, sugar, spices, silk and precious stones. The scent of fresh bread fills the air as thousands of people make their way toward churches to celebrate All Saints' Day. It is Saturday, the 1st of November, 1755. Nothing seems unusual. Within the next hour, one of the deadliest natural disasters in European history will transform this magnificent city into ruins. A massive earthquake, a devastating tsunami, days of unstoppable fires, and a catastrophe so profound that it would change science, religion, philosophy, engineering, and disaster management forever. This is the story of the Great Lisbon Earthquake, a disaster whose lessons continue to shape the modern world nearly 3 centuries later. To understand why the Lisbon earthquake shocked the world, we first need to understand what Lisbon represented. During the mid-18th century, Lisbon was far more than a capital of Portugal. It was the heart of one of the world's largest overseas empires. Portuguese ships crossed the Atlantic and Indian Ocean. Lisbon's churches were among the largest stone structures in the city. When they collapsed, they trapped countless people beneath their roofs and walls. At approximately 9:40 a.m., the earth suddenly began to move. At first, many residents thought it was a brief tremor. Then the shaking intensified. Windows shattered, walls cracked, church bells rang wildly without anyone touching them. Across Lisbon, people rushed outside in confusion. The earthquake continued. Buildings swayed violently. Stone facades collapsed into crowded streets. Massive clouds of dust filled the air, making it difficult to breathe. The noise was overwhelming. Witnesses later described a deafening roar, as though the ground itself wanted to fall. Modern scientists estimate the earthquake reached a magnitude between 8.5 and 9.0 making it one of the strongest earthquakes ever recorded in history. Its epicenter was believed to have been somewhere
As the shaking finally subsided, thousands of survivors believed the worst was over. Dust filled the city. The air smelled of broken stone, smoke, and lime. Cries for help echoed through the ruins. People instinctively fled toward open spaces. Many gathered near the Tagus River, believing the waterfront would be safer than the collapsing city. It seemed like a sensible decision. Wide open areas offered protection from falling buildings. Ships floated peacefully in the harbour. Some survivors even boarded boats, hoping to escape, but the sea was behaving strangely. Witnesses noticed the water beginning to withdraw from the shoreline. The river seemed to empty before their eyes. Ships settled awkwardly on the exposed riverbed. Fish flopped helplessly in the mud. Curious crowds moved closer to look. Few people in Europe had ever seen such a phenomenon. Almost no one recognised what it meant. Today we know it was one of nature's most terrifying warnings. A tsunami was approaching. In 1755, scientists did not yet understand plate tectonics. People searched for explanations using the knowledge available at the time. Some believed the disaster was divine punishment. Others blamed underground fires or mysterious vapours trapped beneath the earth. Many clergy interpreted the catastrophe through religious teachings. At the same time, scholars began asking a different question. Could earthquakes have natural causes that could be studied scientifically? That question would become one of the Lisbon disaster's greatest legacies. Instead of relying only on tradition or superstition, investigators would begin collecting evidence, comparing eyewitness accounts, and searching for patterns. In many ways, the Lisbon earthquake marked the beginning of modern earthquake science. As survivors gathered along the banks of the Tagus River, many believed they had escaped the collapsing buildings. The shaking had finally stopped. Parents searched for their children. Friends embraced one another, grateful to be alive. Then something extraordinary happened. The water in the harbour began to recede. Witnesses watched in confusion as ships settled onto the exposed riverbed anchors, shipwrecks, and parts of the harbour floor, normally hidden beneath meters of water, were suddenly visible. Some people walked onto the exposed seabed out of curiosity. Others searched for valuables that had fallen from damaged ships. No one realised they were standing in one of the most dangerous places imaginable. Today we know this phenomenon is a classic warning sign of a tsunami. In 1755, almost nobody in Europe understood what it meant. Roughly 40 minutes after the earthquake, the Atlantic struck. Eyewitnesses described seeing an enormous wall of water racing toward the city. Modern research suggests that several tsunami waves reached Lisbon, with some estimated to have risen up to 6 meters, 20 feet or more in parts of the city. The first wave slammed into the harbour with incredible force. Ships snapped their moorings like pieces of string. Large vessels were lifted and carried inland. Warehouses exploded apart as water smashed through stone walls. Thousands of people who had escaped the earthquake were swept away within moments. Some tried to climb trees, others clung desperately to floating debris. Many simply disappeared beneath the rushing water. Entire sections of the waterfront vanished. The sea had become as deadly as the earthquake itself. The destruction did not stop at Lisbon. The tsunami spread across the Atlantic Ocean. Along Portugal's southern coast, fishing villages were devastated. Across the border in Spain, powerful waves flooded coastal towns. On the Atlantic coast of Morocco, several ports suffered severe damage, and many lives were lost. Historical records also describe unusual sea disturbances reaching distant coastlines, reminding Europe that this disaster was not confined to one city. It was an international catastrophe. If the earthquake had ended after the shaking, if the tsunami had been the final blow, the disaster would already have been among history's worst. But Lisbon faced a third catastrophe: fire. Remember the thousands of candles burning inside churches during the morning services? When buildings collapsed, many candles remained burning. Kitchen hearths overturned, oil lamps shattered. Cooking fires spread through broken wooden homes. Strong autumn winds carried flames from one building to the next. Soon, dozens of separate fires merged into one enormous firestorm. For nearly 5 days, flames consumed the city. Buildings that had survived the earthquake were reduced to ash. The intense heat became so powerful that witnesses reported it melting metal and making rescue efforts nearly impossible. In some districts, people survived the earthquake and tsunami only to become trapped by advancing flames. When the fires finally began to fade, Lisbon was almost unrecognizable. Entire neighborhoods had disappeared. Churches that had stood for centuries were gone. Government buildings had collapsed. Libraries filled with priceless manuscripts had burned. Paintings, sculptures, maps, royal records, and historical documents were lost forever. Many streets could no longer be recognized beneath mountains of rubble. The smell of smoke lingered for weeks. Those who survived walked through a city that looked more like a battlefield than the capital of a global empire. One question has never been answered with certainty. How many lives were lost? 18th century record keeping was incomplete. Many church records were destroyed in the disaster itself. Modern historians generally estimate that between 30,000 and 50,000 people died, although some older sources suggest even higher numbers. Regardless of the exact figure, the Lisbon earthquake remains one of the deadliest natural disasters in European history. Beyond the lives lost, tens of thousands more were injured, displaced, or left homeless. For many families, everything they owned had vanished in a single morning. Remarkably, King Joseph I of Portugal survived the disaster. He was outside the centre of Lisbon when the earthquake struck. The destruction profoundly affected him. According to historical accounts, the experience left the king deeply uncomfortable, living inside large stone buildings. For years afterwards, he preferred to conduct much of his court from elaborate tents and temporary wooden structures rather than traditional palaces. Whether driven by trauma or caution, the disaster permanently changed the way he lived. As panic spread, one man emerged as the leader of Portugal's recovery. His name was Sebastião José de Carvalho e Melo. History remembers him as the Marquês of Pombal. While much of the government struggled to comprehend the scale of the catastrophe, Pombal acted immediately. According to a famous account, when asked what should be done, he replied, "Now, we bury the dead and feed the living." Whether those were his exact words cannot be confirmed with certainty, but they perfectly capture the practical approach he became known for. Pombal ordered soldiers into the streets. Their first task was restoring order. Looting was dealt with firmly. Food was distributed, temporary shelters were established, medical assistance was organised. The dead were buried or, in some cases, taken out to sea to reduce the risk of disease. These decisions helped prevent an even greater humanitarian disaster. Warehouses exploded apart as water smashed through stone walls. Thousands of people who had escaped the earthquake were swept away within moments. Some tried to climb trees, others clung desperately to floating debris. Many simply disappeared beneath the rushing water. Entire sections of the waterfront vanished. The sea had become as deadly as the earthquake itself. Once the immediate crisis had passed, Pombal did something extraordinary. Rather than relying solely on religious interpretation or rumours, he ordered officials throughout Portugal to collect detailed information. Local authorities received questionnaires asking, when did the shaking begin? How long did it last? Did wells change? Did rivers behave differently? How high did the sea rise? Which buildings survived? And why? Today, these questions may seem ordinary. In 1755, they were revolutionary. Instead of asking only why the disaster had happened, investigators asked how it had happened. answers became one of the earliest systematic collections of earthquake data in history. Many historians consider this investigation an important step toward the birth of modern seismology. When the smoke finally cleared, Lisbon was almost beyond recognition. Entire districts had vanished. Thousands of homes had collapsed. Royal palaces, churches, monasteries, hospitals, libraries, government offices, and marketplaces lay in ruins. The famous Ribeira Palace, once the centre of Portuguese royal power, had disappeared. Inside had been priceless collections of paintings, navigation charts, historical records, manuscripts, and one of Europe's finest royal libraries. Many of these treasures were lost forever. For survivors, the challenge was no longer escaping the disaster. It was rebuilding their lives from nothing. Food was scarce, clean water became difficult to find. Thousands of people slept in makeshift camps outside the ruined city, afraid that more earthquakes might follow. While many European governments might have spent months debating what to do next, Portugal's Chief Minister, Sebastião José de Carvalho e Melo, moved quickly. He believed rebuilding should begin immediately. Rather than simply reconstructing the medieval city exactly as it had been, he proposed something far more ambitious: a completely redesigned Lisbon. Surveyors measured the damaged districts. Engineers mapped the destruction. Architects designed wider streets that would reduce the risk of fires spreading from building to building. Large public squares were planned to create open spaces during future emergencies. The tangled maze of medieval alleys would be replaced with a modern grid system. It was one of the most ambitious urban planning projects of the 18th century. The reconstruction introduced remarkable engineering innovations. Architects developed what became known as Pombaline architecture. At the heart of these buildings was a flexible internal wooden framework called the gaiola, meaning cage. Unlike rigid stone walls, this timber structure could absorb and distribute seismic forces, reducing the likelihood of total collapse during an earthquake. It was one of the earliest known attempts to design buildings specifically to resist earthquakes. To test these new designs, historical accounts suggest that soldiers marched around wooden building models, creating vibrations to simulate ground movement. While simple by modern standards, it represented an early effort to study structural behaviour scientifically. Many of these Pombaline buildings still stand in Lisbon today, a testament to the durability of their design. The Lisbon earthquake changed not only architecture, but also science. Before 1755, earthquakes were often explained through mythology, superstition, or purely religious interpretations. After the disaster, scholars increasingly sought natural explanations. The questionnaires distributed across Portugal provided valuable observations from thousands of witnesses. Officials recorded where the strongest shaking occurred. They noted changes in wells and rivers. They documented the arrival times of the tsunami along different coastlines. Although plate tectonics would not be understood until the 20th century, these observations marked one of the first systematic scientific studies of a major earthquake. Many historians consider the Lisbon investigation a milestone in the development of modern seismology. It demonstrated that natural disasters could be studied using evidence rather than speculation alone. The earthquake did more than destroy buildings. It shook ideas. Across Europe, philosophers asked difficult questions. If a just and benevolent God governed the world, why had such devastation occurred on a major religious holiday, inside churches filled with worshippers? The French philosopher Voltaire was deeply affected. In his poem on the Lisbon disaster and later in his novel Candide, he criticised the optimistic belief that humanity lived in the best of all possible worlds. In his poem on the Lisbon disaster and later in his novel Candide, he criticised the optimistic belief that humanity lived in the best of all possible worlds. For Voltaire, the catastrophe challenged simplistic explanations for suffering. Jean-Jacques Rousseau responded differently. He argued that the scale of the tragedy was partly influenced by human choices, such as constructing large, densely populated cities where many people lived close together. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant also studied reports of the earthquake. Rather than viewing it solely through a religious lens, he attempted to understand its physical causes using the scientific knowledge available at the time. The Lisbon earthquake became one of the defining intellectual events of the Enlightenment. Like many historic disasters, the Lisbon earthquake has generated myths over the centuries. One common misconception is that the earthquake alone destroyed the city. In reality, it was the combination of three disasters, the earthquake, the tsunami and the fires, that caused such widespread devastation. Another myth claims that the disaster was interpreted only as divine punishment. While many people held religious explanations, others immediately began searching for natural causes. In fact, the event encouraged greater scientific investigation rather than ending it. Some stories also exaggerate the height of the tsunami or the exact death toll. Modern historians continue to study contemporary documents because many early estimates were based on incomplete information. The truth is that some details may never be known with certainty. What remains clear is the immense scale of the catastrophe. Today, the rebuilt district of Pombalina remains one of Lisbon's most recognisable areas. Its broad streets, orderly layout and elegant buildings reflect the ambitious reconstruction that followed the disaster. Visitors walking through the city often admire its beauty without realising that much of what they see was created after 1755. The earthquake also influenced emergency planning around the world. Governments recognised the importance of organised disaster response. Engineers continued improving earthquake-resistant construction. Scientists refined methods for studying seismic activity. Many principles first explored after Lisbon continue to influence modern disaster management. Its tragedy became a lesson for the world, and nearly 300 years later, the Great Lisbon Earthquake continues to remind us that while nature's power can never be controlled, knowledge, preparation and determination can help societies recover and rebuild. This complexity makes identifying the precise fault responsible challenging. Modern seismic monitoring has greatly improved our understanding of the region. Although earthquakes of the same magnitude are extremely rare, the area remains geologically active. The Lisbon disaster reminds us that powerful natural forces continue to shape our planet. Nearly 3 centuries have passed since the 1st of November 1755. The people who witnessed that terrible morning are long gone, but the lessons remain. The disaster transformed urban planning. It accelerated the scientific study of earthquakes. It influenced philosophy, politics, architecture, and emergency management. Most importantly, it demonstrated humanity's ability to rebuild after unimaginable loss. Lisbon refused to disappear. Instead, it emerged stronger, more organised, and better prepared for the future. The Great Lisbon Earthquake was far more than a natural disaster. It was a turning point in world history. A single morning of destruction reshaped one of Europe's greatest cities and changed how humanity understands nature itself. The earthquake, the tsunami, and the fires claimed tens of thousands of lives. Yet from the ruins came new ideas. Ideas that transformed science, engineering, architecture, and disaster response. Today, every earthquake-resistant building, every emergency evacuation plan, and every scientific study of seismic activity carries a small part of Lisbon's legacy. The city that once lay in ashes became a symbol of resilience. Its tragedy became a lesson for the world. And nearly 300 years later, the Great Lisbon Earthquake continues to remind us that while nature's power can never be controlled, knowledge, preparation and determination can help societies recover and rebuild.